thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Lund Company.
Practical experience of driving says flow of traffic is the safest. And my hope is that you all's voice, the Independent Truckers Association, that your all's voice is amplified in Congress, not those that are saying things that are opposite.
Welcome to Trucking with OOIDA. I'm Scott Thompson.
And I'm Ashley Blackford.
We just heard there from Representative Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma, a friend of the show. We're going to speak to him here in just a little bit about his speed limiter legislation that he's been promoting there in the U.S. House, essentially hoping to put the brakes on any plans in the future for FMCSA to impose a speed limiter mandate. We know that the issue is dead for now, but not dead forever. Yeah. So we'll talk to him about that. Looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah. Then we'll have Kim Kelley, a survivor of a religious cult and trafficking when she was a child. She had some really great advice for truck drivers on what to look for and just kind of her hope for a solution to that very big problem.
Very big problem. Looking forward to that as well. Let's get into the news here first, though. We've got more news, actually, out of the U.S. Department of Transportation. On Tuesday, made a threat in the form of an announcement related to English language proficiency enforcement for truck drivers, a hot topic in recent months. This is something, obviously, that got started a few months ago with an earlier announcement, some action at CVSA as well. And then this month, really got stirred up again when a truck driver apparently in the country illegally was blamed for causing a crash in Florida that tragically killed 3 people. That driver, according to U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, does not speak English, which again comes back to the English language proficiency standards, which the USDOT bolstered back in May, with enforcement taking effect about a month later on June 25th. But Secretary Duffy here in that news conference on Tuesday alongside FMCSA Chief Counsel Jesse Elison said 3 states in particular are not complying with the requirements. Let's have a listen.
We are not going to tolerate states that don't comply with the rules that come from this department. And so we are going to, first of all, we've identified several states that have not been in compliance. That would be Washington, California, and New Mexico. Those are the three states that have not complied with this rule, which, by the way, this driver in Florida had received a CDL in Washington, California, and was pulled over in July for speeding, and no doubt couldn't speak the English language. And law enforcement in New Mexico did not take his rig out of service. So this one driver touched all 3 states. Based on our review, they are not complying with our rule. And so phase 1 for us, which I'm announcing today, is we are going to give these states 30 days to come into compliance with truck drivers speaking proficiently the English language, or we're going to look at federal funding that they receive under the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. So I believe California is 20 million or 30 million? 30 million. Washington is 10 million, and New Mexico is 7 million. Correct. Jesse will confirm that in a second. But these are millions of dollars. By the way, this is phase 1. There are other actions that we can take to make sure states comply. And hopefully in the next 30 days, we won't have to withhold any money from them. But if they don't come into compliance, we will start with withholding this money, and then we will take additional steps to guarantee compliance. And this is not, just to be clear, this is not just about saying we have some obscure rule that we want them to comply with, that truck drivers speak English proficiently. This is about keeping people safe on the road.
So Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy there giving 30 days, no enforcement, no federal funding. That's the threat. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Big announcement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The Trump administration is pausing all worker visas for commercial truck drivers. This, of course, is in the wake of that Florida crash that you had mentioned earlier. This announcement also comes after OOIDA asked Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to suspend the state's authority to issue non-domiciled CDLs for interstate commerce. OOIDA is applauding Rubio's announcement and says it's committed to work with this administration and Congress to develop a comprehensive licensing and training standards that will prevent unsafe drivers from getting behind the wheel.
Lots of action, lots of swift action there on those two fronts.
Good.
More action here, actually, this time out of the Environmental Protection Agency, which has been busy of late, and in this case, pushing back against California's requirements for out-of-state heavy-duty vehicles. The EPA on Monday announced a proposal that disapproves of California's heavy-duty inspection and maintenance requirements in relation to out-of-state and out-of-country vehicles. The agency expressing concern that the requirements violate the U.S. Constitution's Commerce Clause, as well as Section 110 of the Clean Air Act. A comment period now underway through September 25th on this. You can get those comments in if you want to. Really just the latest chapter, though, in this book that is unfolding here. That is the Trump administration versus California's emission standards. So stay tuned.
Taking a look at diesel prices, they dropped a penny from last week. The Energy Information Administration reports this week's national average is $3.70 a gallon. The East Coast, New England, Lower Atlantic, Midwest, Gulf Coast, and Rocky Mountains all saw a slight dip, while Central Atlantic, West Coast, and California saw just a slight increase.
And real quick here, Ashley, if you needed a reminder, and I don't, but some people might, on the speed at which the passage of time is churning before our very eyes here, it's time to talk chain laws, believe it or not. Colorado's chain law going into effect on September 1st of this year, as it does every year. That's Monday.
Wow.
If you're not near a calendar, several roadways are affected. So make sure that you're chained up, or at least have them in the cab there with you, because the chain checks will be in effect sooner rather than later.
Time flies.
Time does fly. And speaking of time flying and sooner rather than later, we're going to take a very short commercial break here. But when we come back, Congressman Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma talking speed limiter legislation. We'd like to talk to him, too, about the English language proficiency issue as well. I'm sure that's on his radar. So stay tuned. That's coming up next right here on Trucking with OOIDA. And we're back. Ashley, we were talking a lot this past summer. Truckers really over the moon when the USDOT officially rescinded that proposal that would have required speed limiters on all commercial vehicles. Make no mistake, though, and we've talked about this quite a bit, the win doesn't mean that the greater battle is over here.
Unfortunately.
Our next guest knows that all too well. U.S. Representative Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma first introduced the DRIVE Act, I believe it was more than 2 years ago now, and he will correct me if I'm wrong on this, and he's still pushing for passage. And the congressman joins us on the line now. Congressman Brecheen, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Happy to be with you.
So you're, I think you're on recess right now, right? And you're back home. Is that right, in Oklahoma?
Well, I'm doing town halls. We're doing a series of 20 different live town halls across Oklahoma right now.
How are those going?
Good. We're talking about the changes in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine it's good to be back home as well.
Yes.
Get back home.
I'm not home right now.
You're still moving around, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the road talking to you right now. We're doing 5 a day, 4 straight days town hall.
Wow. Still working hard there, and we appreciate your time, obviously, taking time to talk to us here. Let's get right into it, too. And we've talked to you before about this bill here, the Deregulating Restrictions on Interstate Vehicles and 18-Wheelers Act, which is much easier to say when referred to as the DRIVE Act. For those unfamiliar here, and we've talked about this before, but there may be some folks out there that don't know what this is. Can you explain what the bill is and maybe more importantly, why it's needed?
Yeah, well, thankfully, the Trump administration sees this for what it is, and it was a desire to add more regulation on top of those that are moving big trucks down, highways, trying to impede their ability to go travel at the regular flow of traffic. And I've got a Class A CDL, and one of the things I absolutely remember in my time sitting in a semi is that's the safest place you can be at, not the federal government coming in. In history, federal government's tried this. It's tried to set a different speed limit relative to what the flow of traffic was and override what the state individually set. And what happens is you're going to have people running into each other. You're going to have people with more accidents because of adding more confusion and the flow of traffic. Most people who first get their CDLs, man, they know about staying away, right?
Yeah.
They know about making sure how many feet they've got to stay back, and they're learning those air brakes. They're learning how to be able to get that vehicle shut down. And so flow of traffic, experienced truckers know, is so important. And yet, if you have a change of speed limit rule for big trucks versus everybody else, it causes more problems.
Yeah, and what you're talking about there is obviously a safety issue, and that's a huge one that associations like OOIDA continue to make a point, right? That this is a safety issue if you're slowing down semis. We've talked before, and I know that the states' rights portion of this bill is very important to you as well. Can you talk a little more about that?
But look, yeah, absolutely. Fifth Amendment matters to me. But this has been tried before, right? Where the Congress tried to do something from the federal level relative to speed limits, and they found it was a mistake, and it reverted back. And yet this is what was under the Biden administration attempt to not learn from history. So I'm grateful to the Trump administration. They've corrected this. We'd love to put it in statute so another administration can't go back and try to reverse it. But, man, with your blessing, I would love to, and my hope is that the trucking community is going to help us figure out a solution to this guy who went across the median and 3 people were killed. Another place where Rubio and others in the Trump administration understand how dangerous it is when liberal states like Washington have allowed people that supposedly take a written exam, right? If you have a CDL, you took a written exam. How in the world did you pass when you can't even speak English and you can't read English when you, after the accident, were unable to prove that you could speak or read it? And what are we going to do to make sure that when someone is taking that written exam, that these liberal states are not creating the opportunity for lives to be in danger? What my understanding is under the Obama administration, there was a memo that went out from, the Obama administration, the memo went out saying, yeah, that written exam is there, English speaking is there, but just ignore it, don't enforce it. Now, whether it was that or the state of Washington who gave this guy his driver's license who didn't follow the law, we're not sure. But this is something we've got to figure out in a hurry relative to those that are coming to this country and are on the highways.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, I think, in a larger picture sense, is we've got some regulations on the books or kind of maybe off the books a little bit, that were not being enforced or are not being enforced. And we've got others like your speed limiter bill in which they are kind of being forced upon people for an outcome we are not necessarily sure what that's going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about there, the need for your bill, and I kind of mentioned it at the top here, but the Trump administration pulling this proposal away, certainly a win, one that was celebrated by truckers again all over the country. But again, and you talked about it briefly, but I want you to talk about it a little bit more if you could. Your bill is still important and it's still pertinent because there is a possibility that whatever administration may come next, whatever that may look like, they have the ability right now as we speak to reintroduce that. Can you talk just a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The force of law would be in effect and would allow the ping-ponging of administrative changes from one president to the next. We've got an administration of President Trump that is getting it right. And you always run the risk of some administration getting it wrong. And so I'd love to have a whole number of co-authors among members of Congress to join. And the problem is you've got some, even in the trucking world that got to understand that the flow of traffic, even though it might help your safety rating, in terms of your concerns of safety rating, the practical experience of driving says flow of traffic is the safest. And my hope is that you all's voice, the Independent Truckers Association, that your all's voice is amplified in Congress, not those that are saying things that are opposite.
Now, at last check, you had 22 co-sponsors to the bill and none since early June. What's your pitch when trying to get your colleagues in the House on board? Well,
it's I don't know how many people other than myself and Brian Babin have a Class C CDL.
Yeah.
Mike Collins, but Mike, has announced he's running for Senate. And so I don't, in terms of Mike being there, when we may have a chance to get this done. But it's just people have the experience ought to be listened to.
Yeah, what do those conversations look like when you're talking to somebody? And we talk about this all the time because there are some of these things. And again, I think the speed limiter situation or proposal is kind of a perfect example of this, where it sounds good and it looks good on paper to people who are not familiar with the trucking
Right.
industry. But when you start explaining, these things that you explained earlier to folks who don't quite understand it, there is kind of a light bulb moment and they think, oh, yeah, I do hate getting behind semis. And if you speed limit trucks, I'm going to be behind a lot more of them.
Yeah.
So the
And
educating.
what you're not
Yeah.
bringing up is the person that gets hung behind you on a long incline, right?
Yeah.
And then they're so frustrated because they feel like they're late for whatever event they're trying to get to. And then they take chances
Yep.
trying to get around you, right?
Yeah.
And so anybody that's gone down an incline to climb another incline, if you can stay at the flow of traffic, it gives you the ability when you hit that mid mark of going up that rise, especially if you're loaded down 25 ton, whatever, that you got the ability to not slow everybody down so much.
Yeah.
65 mile an hour speed limiting it is going to be a huge impact in your ability to travel with the flow of traffic and be able to not cause that type of disruption. And not only that, get rear-ended. Somebody come up behind you, think wide loads. Let's say you're properly marked, but you're carrying a wide load. And there are other things that would happen. People not paying attention, to people, that are breaking the law in unattended driving, but say they're on their cell phone, they run up on you, they're traveling with the flow of traffic. It's hard to get around a semi-trailer with a dozer on the back of it, right?
Yeah,
You're not paying
yeah.
attention and you run up on the end of it. There's a whole lot of steel there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, all the support, thus far is from the Republican side of the aisle. How have attempts to get Democrats on board gone? I assume you're making the pitch to them as well.
Ma'am, I have not had the opportunity to visit with a Democrat about this bill. I've been so focused on one big, beautiful bill. I'm on budget and homeland security. My focus really for the last 6 months has been doing nothing because I've been one of the, I would say, 5 to 10 most active on the one big, beautiful bill because of my budget committee assignment. Staff and pitching this thing in terms of large conferences like the Republican Study Committee, that's where the majority of finding co-authors has come from. In terms of adding more co-authors, the time limitation and the activity level really for this first 6 months, first 100 days of the Trump administration, we're going to have more time to add more people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to tell you I've asked Democrats specifically, but that wouldn't be true.
Yeah, you've been incredibly busy, I know, just over the past several months, and you kind of explained why there. I think for that reason, I think it's interesting too when you look at possibilities here because, kind of like the Schoolhouse Rock, what was how a bill becomes law kind of thing, There are a couple different ways and pathways, I think, for this particular bill and for any bill really, but in terms of this one in particular, you're crafting the next highway bill right now, and those talks are ongoing, and I know there's a lot of back and forth on that. Is there any chance or any hope, I suppose, that this language, again, banning any administration from imposing a speed limiter mandate, is it a possibility that it gets tossed into that mix at some point here down the line?
Yeah, hey, we're open for those that are advocates of the bill can assist us, our team, of looking at different avenues to be able to attach it. Yeah, as you all follow Congress. That is oftentimes the singular approach of having a measure on its standalone. That happens, but the opportunity to attach it to something as a rider that increases the chances. So absolutely, we would love to have that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it also helps, too. You've got the companion bill in the Senate, right? Senator Steve Daines, we spoke to him, I think, a couple months ago about this particular issue as well. But that helps your chances, too, I think, when you've got more people on board, right?
Yes, absolutely. The 20-something co-authors, that lends credibility. People see it. There's other organizations that are supportive of this are going around. People pay attention. They know, they look down and they go, okay, hey, Brian Babbitt, he's got a Class A CDL. He's on this bill. I call him, You see people like that are on a measure, and they've got experience in the world, and it increases your chance. You can't be an expert in all things. You have to look to people that have life experiences, and that would match what measures they're running, and it lends credibility when they see people have real life experience signed on something.
Yeah. When and you're obviously talking to truck drivers right now, and we're kind of giving this message to them, and we talk about this all the time because there is a sense, I think, among the general public, and truck drivers are no exception here, that calling my member of Congress, isn't going to make a difference. Emailing them, sending a letter, whatever it may look like. But talk about that, because I think it does make a difference, right? When you hear directly
Yeah.
from constituents.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that conversation look like? Yeah.
Well, keep it top of mind for them, right? I mean, it's easy. I'm one of a number of members that run a number of bills, and the more conversations you have, the more it keeps it top of mind every week. Members of Congress's schedule are crazy. When they're in D.C., you're talking about something happening every minute, and so to have people come and visit with you about a measure, or to have people visit with other members to help you, aid you, go into their office saying, "Hey, I'd love for you to sign on to this measure." That normally earns as soon as that person leaves, especially if they're a constituent of yours, they'll look at their staff and say, "Hey, look into that bill," right?
Yeah.
So it absolutely is impactful. And then when they look into the bill and say, "Hey, looks like something we can support," you just, as one constituent, going to see your member of Congress, got them to add their name, which lends the chance that thing gets advanced, and leadership picks it up and puts it on the floor.
Yeah. You talked about the English language proficiency issue, and that's certainly a hot button issue right now. Non-domiciled CDLs, it's all kind of, in a way, kind of lumped in together. The conversations that we are hearing now and we're seeing now, you're obviously listening to them as well, and them pointing out some of the inconsistencies or some of the flaws that are in the system right now. When you look at the entire conversation, are you encouraged by what you're hearing? Because it is bringing to light some issues that have been a problem for quite a while now.
I was looking at a Bruckner's truck sign as we're driving down the highway here, which is where I used to get one of my semis worked on because they dealt with Mac. And I missed the context of your call. Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey,
I was shocked. I was seeing Bruckner's out in northeast Oklahoma. They're in Oklahoma City.
You took a trip down memory lane. No problem.
I literally I'm embarrassed. What was your question, man?
I love it. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was just asking you, you brought up the English language proficiency issue earlier.
Yes.
Non-domiciled CDLs, we're hearing a lot of conversation about that. We're hearing a lot of conversations, frankly, about things that have been issues for quite a number of years now. And again, that we're seeing and hearing those conversations, I think, is a step in the right direction because it means that we're working towards solutions on some of these things.
Yeah.
Basically, my question was, are you encouraged by what you've seen in recent months? Again, in the context of trucking, that we are kind of moving in the right direction and working to solve some of these problems that are out there.
Well, I hope so. It's sad that 3 people's lives were lost in Florida when that guy chose to, drive across the median and they ended up running under him. And, it's tragic. The fact that the guy couldn't pass any literacy, wasn't able to speak or write English. I mean, as law enforcement officers are trying to figure out how in the world did this guy get a Class A CDL. Then you find out he went to Washington to get it and was transferred the driver's license to California, something relative to New Mexico. You got to wonder, what was it initially that allowed him to get admittance in Washington? What did they do? And again, we don't know. Was it Obama administration time period of 2016 where they relaxed the rules on English proficiency, said, don't enforce it? Is Obama administration liable in terms of the foolishness of that? Is it the fact that the state of Washington is not adhering to, they're doing something that would pervert somebody having to pass that metric? At the end of the day, whether it's for safety or damage, right? You better know when you're coming under a bridge what that number says, because if you tow in an excavator, it's got a boom reach that couldn't be folded down low enough, and you're going to run in and hang up on a bridge. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal to the taxpayer. If you're coming out of a gravel yard and you're several ton over, we know that it's long term for a state interest of being able to make sure that as we're driving semis down the roads, that we're not having to get in certain lanes because that highway stretches so well on the interstate. You have to scoot over.
Yeah.
It's so miserable, right? That's why we have certain weight limit rules, is to protect the surface of highways. So there's so many different factors: safety, ability to maintain our infrastructure. You got to have people that abide by the law, and they got to be able to read the signs.
Yeah,
doesn't know what they're doing in your country.
Yeah.
So this has to be a focus for a multitude. I told my staff a few weeks ago, because of because of my background, and I said, let's find out. Let's find out. Let's get a hold of state transportation departments. Let's get a hold of the trucking associations, and let's find out what solution could be here.
Yeah, got to ask those questions.
Yeah.
They're important for sure.
And that includes y'all. Where y'all
Yes.
get to educate us, right? Because this is
Yeah.
a specialty you all have to educate members of Congress.
Yeah.
That's true. We only have a couple minutes left, so I'm just curious, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Don't discount your voice. For those of you that have a blue parrot as you drive down the road,
Yep.
that you paid for that device so that you can almost have an office-like setting in the semi, and you put that thing on, you pick up the phone and call your member of Congress office. You got a long drive? Do it. Let your voice be heard. And you call in, and staffers are here. Hey, I'm sitting in a semi truck. I'm not breaking any law. I've got my blue parrot device on, and I'm calling to let my member of Congress, have some information for somebody that's practical, who lives in this world. Maybe you can get them to add their name to a measure or to see something in a different way.
Absolutely. And fightingfortruckers.com is a great place to do just that because you can get all the information right there at your fingertips. Congressman Brecheen, you're a friend of the show. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us here. We're glad you took us on a trip down memory lane there as well while we had you on the phone.
That
we'll
was
talk to you
not
again
a
soon.
plug for that. I wasn't trying to plug a business. I spent too much time there trying to get a particular truck. No fault of them, but to the truck. We all have those trucks. You're like, you might be a limit.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to get rid of this.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And we'll hopefully talk to you again soon. And take care out there and have fun at those town halls.
Thanks, man. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Take care. And again, that was Congressman Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma. Has really been good on this issue for a number of years now. And I think it's really important what he said there. Got to reach out. I know we always get up on our soapbox and talk
we say
about
it all the time. But to hear
for
from
a
him
reason.
is great.
Yeah. You got to reach out to your lawmakers. You got to educate them on these things.
It can make a difference.
And the speed limiter issue, even though it is gone again for now, it is not dead. And his bill would ensure that this thing doesn't pop up again like a zombie in a zombie movie. So fightingfortruckers.com is the place to get information on your lawmaker. Trucking with OOIDA continues right after this.
So, Scott, I was scrolling TikTok the other night. I came across a woman who was talking about being a survivor of a cult and trafficking. And I kind of immediately got to thinking that, on our show, we've talked to Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT, many times. It's a great organization. But I've personally never, had the opportunity to talk to anybody who has been a survivor of trafficking. So I tracked this gal down, Kim Kelley. She joins us now on the line to talk about her incredible story of survival. Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you featuring this message. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yes, for sure. Can you give me a little bit of some of your backstory?
Yep. It's a long one. We'll try to summarize a whole lot here. So I was born and raised in an international religious cult. For anyone who studies cults, which I'm not asking you to, there's definitely the list of maybe top 10 most notoriously abusive, meaning harmful, biggest, and most influential cults in modern history. So this originated in the United States in the late 60s. What I'm getting to here is it's one thing for an adult to choose to do something kooky with their life, like join a cult. That's, we live in a free country. That being said, society does not understand the difference between the children born into and raised in these controlled environments that do not consent, that do not have outside access or advocacy, and that are often in plain sight of the public. But a lot of these things are overlooked, whether it's due to religious freedom or the things that are right in front of us that we're not aware enough to see. So I'm summarizing a lot here. Again, it was an international cult. My parents are from Texas. We were mostly American children. This cult was in almost every single country around the world. Now, I was born in 89. So by the time I was born, there had been quite a lot of children born into this cult. We were around 25,000 children. Born and raised, trafficking was one of the many forms of abuse, but we were mostly American children being trafficked all over the world. So I was born in Brazil. We lived in Brazil for about 8 years. Then I lived in Mexico for a long time. I did live in Houston, Texas. I was in Harris County for about 4 years of my childhood, from the age of 10 to 14 years old. So there's a lot to unpack in this story. The short version is I escaped when I was 20 years old. That's an upbringing I would not wish on any child. That being said, there's a lot of, I don't focus on the scandalous details. I do focus on the message and what people need to know today. It's not about this cult, although I'll share some personal stories and experiences that relate to helping people understand how we can help to not only be aware of these things, because awareness is just acknowledging the problem, but then what can we actually do about it to be effective? And that's why I believe in, among other things, and all the actions I'm taking and training law enforcement and working with experts to solve these problems in the digital realm, as well as within legislation and boots on the ground, which I'll talk about more. There's so much all of us can do to be part of the solution. And truckers are the eyes and ears of America. They're out there on highways and places where they're likely to encounter some of these situations. So again, I love y'all for hosting this conversation, and I'm excited to dig in.
What do you see as being the solution to this massive problem?
There's not one solution. However, when it comes to, let me put it like this problem would not be thriving in our country without the protection and support and funding that it's enjoying. If people were more aware, I believe that awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate. Mm-hmm. The more people that are walking around knowing what to look for, and step 2, being willing to take action, absolutely, that would reduce the predator's ability to operate. It makes it harder for bad guys to get away with doing bad things to children. And that's why I speak out.
You had mentioned, one of the issues is people don't know the signs, and then they don't act on those signs. But what are the signs that people should look out for, especially truck drivers?
Yeah, for sure.
So I have a lot to say there. Now, again, I don't mean to be, talk in circles, but in every single case, there's not one way a child looks. There's not one way it happens. I wish there was like a 1, 2, 3 ABC easy button. You know what I mean? That's not what your question was. But I want people to understand there's not some big obvious sign. It's not going to be as obvious as you and I would like it to be. I'm going to unpack a few things first, and then we'll zero in on what to look for. First thing to understand, familial trafficking is the number 1 most reported form of child trafficking today in America. Familial trafficking. Families trafficking their own children. Number 1, I need people to understand that, because generally, the overwhelming majority is not a man in a white van jumping out with a mask and a weapon. Mm-hmm. It's someone the kid knows and is supposed to be able to trust. I'm going to paint this picture broadly, but then I'll zoom in later, but just realize I was born and raised in this environment. Myself, my siblings, everyone I grew up with, etc. I was born and raised in this environment. My parents created me for this environment. They thought this was God's highest will. This was an international religious cult. It was a Jesus cult. That being said, that's not going to look as obvious in public as people might think, but let's draw out some comparisons. All right, so I'm not going to talk about being overseas because that's a whole different, body of water. Anyway, being a foreigner in a foreign country, that's a whole different level of what to look for, right? Yeah. So let's take 10 to 14-year-old me in Houston, Texas. Every single week, every single weekend, I was working on the streets, in restaurants, in shopping centers, in grocery stores, in malls and people's houses and famous landmarks in Houston, Texas. 10 to 14 years old. I'm obviously not 18. I'm clearly a child, okay? Often I was by myself. Often I was with other kids. It occurred to me recently that not once did one adult or law enforcement officer ask me if I was okay. During the 4 years that I was out in the open in public in America, not one time did one concerned citizen have the awareness to ask a child, "Are you okay? What are you doing here? Why are you by yourself? Have you eaten today? Where do you live? Why are no adults here with you? Why are you here by yourself? Where are your parents? Why aren't you in school?"
Yeah.
Now, I'm not asking people to ask perfect questions, and I'm not expecting people to understand what's happening here, meaning you see a scene. This is what it's generally going to look like. You're going to see a child in a situation where something doesn't look right. It is not going to be as obvious. It's not going to be a malnourished, dirty child on the side of the road with a sign saying, help me. It's going to be a situation where something seems off. And I want you to listen to that gut instinct. And I want you to play dumb and ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm oversimplifying this information with the understanding there's not a one-size-fits-all script I can give you. You're going to have to use your best judgment and apply this to every situation. But this general information is somewhat of a playbook to help people understand how to help. And more importantly, I'm asking people not to do nothing.
Yeah.
I interacted with tens of thousands of people throughout those 4 years. There were Christians debating me about the denomination. There were people asking me all kinds of questions. Not one person asked if I was okay.
And that makes perfect sense. And I guess the next question is, if you sense something, and you're kind of talking about the signs here, if you sense something is off, a lot of people, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but a lot of people would say, I don't want to get involved. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong. And then the horror of having that idea of, I've just called the police on somebody who you know what I mean? I think there's a situation, as someone who doesn't want to, mess up someone's life or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Their day, I guess, is a better way to put it. You need to listen to those instincts. Is that right?
Yeah, so let me relate it to you that way, because all these are great questions, and I'm really glad we're unpacking this, right? I'm here to smash every excuse, and I'm not saying anything you said was an excuse. What I'm saying is, let's unpack the worst-case scenario. If we're going about it this route, you're looking at a situation, something seems off, and I'm trusting that you are using your best judgment and something really seems off, right? So let's say you gain a lot of information, but then these people take off. But now you have the descriptors of the adult and the child, you have the make and model of their car, you have their license plate, and let's say you call the police and make a report. Now, ideally, you're not just calling and like, hey, there's a kid with an adult and something's off, bye, right? Like, that's probably not something I would report if I really don't, like, the point of collecting data is to get more information that, like, you're not going to be 100% sure, but I think any good person is going to be like, nah, there's something off. If you're really, if you've really looked into this and there's something there.
Yeah.
All right. So when we're making the report, we're giving them helpful information, where you are, your location, the, make them all the car, the license plate, like as much information as you can. But let's unpack this, right? Let's say it's not really worst case scenario, but like, let's say your fears are true and you're wrong. Nothing's wrong with the situation, or at least the police can't find anything wrong with the situation. What's the worst that can happen? You feel embarrassed. You wasted some time. But let's flip this script, right? Let's go in the other direction. So let's say that while I was out there on the streets in Houston, Texas, let's say someone would have come by and be like, are you okay? And I answer some questions and they're like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And they call the cops. And a cop comes up, and let's say they picked me up off the streets. All right, here's what's complicated. They would have returned me home to my parents, who were the ones trafficking me. So it's not like I would have been rescued. But you know what would have happened? In other words, the cops probably would have reported back to the stranger, oh, no, it's fine. Her parents, granted, this was like a while ago. That being said, what would have happened, I could have spent less time on the streets. It would have reduced the predator's ability to operate. But more importantly, I think tens of thousands of children would have spent less time on the streets. Maybe we could have had a childhood. Maybe we could have gone to school. Maybe we could have gotten medical attention. Maybe we could have had a different life, at least a different childhood.
Yeah.
If someone had had the awareness to ask questions, that would have reduced the predator's ability to operate. No one did, and I'm not blaming anyone, but I'm saying those predators were able to continue operating unhinged.
Yeah.
I'm talking 170-degree weather in Houston, Texas, in the middle of summer. We're standing on busy intersections. It's crazy because I drive through Houston sometimes today, and I'm like, oh my, it's wild driving up at some of these places, and I'm like, I can't imagine a 12-year-old girl standing on that corner and me just driving by like, oh, yeah, totally normal.
Yeah.
Keep on going, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, so what I'm saying is it's not always going to be this heroic rescue story, but I promise you,
Could help.
awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate in ways that might be intangible, but it matters. Now, I'm going to tell another story along these lines because this really puts a bow on it in terms of the impact that isn't always measured. All right, so look, there's a perfect world, right, where in ideal situations we'd have these wonderful outcomes in every case. That's not the real world. I'm going to tell you a story about there are 2 reasons why I did not suffer worse abuse as a child in this cult. Now, I was born in 89. I have older siblings. The older siblings suffered the most unimaginable, terrible things. I was lucky enough to be born last. And around the time I was born, there was a series of international raids because enough people had escaped the cult and notified either relatives or local authorities. There were coordinated raids in several different countries around the world where local authorities stormed these cult compounds. They arrested the adults, and they took the children into third world country institutions. Most of these were third world countries. Now, let's quick pause right there, right? This happened, I believe, it was like 92, 93. All these different countries. The closest raid to me was in Argentina. We were in Brazil at the time. Completely different country, same continent. We had compounds. We had multiple compounds in multiple cities around Brazil, definitely like hundreds within the country of Brazil. It didn't even happen in the same country. I'm going to speed up the story about these raids because that's a whole other thing. But look, you would think our stories ended there because the headlines came out saying children rescued and adults arrested and yay. All right. Speeding it up, there was an international court case about 2 short years later out of the UK where the judge decided that although there was harm found, never mind, it's fine. Everyone can go home. The group was acquitted.
Wow.
There are court documents. Like, you can look this up. None of the adults were convicted. The children were returned. Now, again, quick pause. And there's a lot of lessons from this story. The headline said the children were rescued, but in those third world institutions, a lot of children suffered worse abuse. Some babies did not make it. Then those children were returned to the same abusive environment. So, like, unpack the corruption and the colossal failure of the government on every level here, but let's get back to the story. All right. What it did do, it did reduce the predator's ability to operate. So after those couple of years, this cult was forced to pretend to be less abusive. This cult was forced to create minimum age abuse limits and things like that, like a charter book where there was less of the bad things for people, for kids my age on down. We experienced less of those bad things. I'm using real soft words here because I'm focusing on the message.
Yeah.
I want people to understand, as intangible as some of this impact is, I'm not talking about thoughts and prayers. I'm talking about action, right? As intangible as you asking if this child is okay and checking on this child and maybe even checking that adult and being like, hey, you know what I mean? Depending on the situation. If nothing else, if zero action is ever taken, if that adult does not care, I'm letting you know that that child notices that somebody cares, and even that matters. I'm telling you that I had no idea people cared. Fast forward, I was 30 years old, and I'm, raising money for this nonprofit with the missing and murdered Indigenous women, and then I'm understanding more about child trafficking in America as a whole, and then I'm looking for which nonprofit, which politician's helping, like who's doing what about this. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a marketing professional. I live and die by data. Like, it's horrendous when you look into it. Please have at it. It is horrendous. That's, Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm looking into this and I'm like, whoa. Okay, so first of all, that's what this was. We were trafficked. It's the sale and exploitation of children. Somebody's profiting from this child's exploitation, right? So again, we talked about the spectrum of there's child abuse. Separately, there's child trafficking. 100% of trafficking is abuse. Not all abuse is trafficking.
Right.
So all that to say, lots going on here that the child doesn't understand and may not understand for years. Lots going on that the public doesn't understand. I'm asking people to play dumb and ask questions because awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate.
It's great advice, Kim.
Very good advice.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time here, but just wanted to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing this advice because it's something that people need to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think your point as to,
It's not
one
talked about
simple
enough.
question and making sure you take action can really change a person's life for the better. So again, thank you so much, Kim. We really do
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys again for hosting this message, and thank you for everyone who's willing to do their part.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. That was
Kim,
great.
that
Thank
was
you
excellent.
so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit HowsProducts.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
And we're back on Trucking with OOIDA. Scott, saw a story recently, Wheel of Fortune.
Big fan.
Are you?
I'd love to be on Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, see,
I think
don't
I'm pretty
I would
good.
do well.
I think I'm pretty good.
Oh, well, would you have gotten this one? I'm curious. They recently had a contestant. She missed a $68,000 win after not being able to guess the phrase, faxing it over now.
Faxing it over now.
I mean, I will admit, that's a bit of a dated statement.
Because, and didn't she mention something about the fact that she didn't even know what faxing was or something?
This is a good example of you need to actually watch the video and hear how she said that. She was
Don't just read the headlines.
Don't just read the headlines.
Good. Give me a lesson. I like it.
So what? She was like, I don't even know what faxing is. Like, it's so old. Like, that's what I got from her comment.
Oh, like she was like joking.
She was joking,
kind of like she knows what a fax machine is.
I mean,
because she
judging
was
by what she was
not. Yeah, she wasn't super young.
No, she wasn't old, but she was.
She was in the age bracket that would know what a fax machine was.
And I say that's a dated statement. However, what did I message you a couple days ago and ask?
Do we have a fax machine in the building? And I had to think about it too. But yes, we do. We do have a fax machine in the building.
And I actually don't need it. It turns out I was filling out the wrong form. But
when I worked, and this is just not that long ago, several years ago, when I worked at a news station, there were announcements that would come in on the fax machine.
Yeah, I'd get press releases.
Press releases would come in on the fax machine from different organizations.
Police.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we had email. I assume that they have computers and email too, but maybe not. Some of the, I understand when it's like a church or something. It may be an older, infrastructure or whatever. Maybe they don't have a computer that's hooked up to the internet. I'm not quite sure.
Nowadays, I
don't know.
But I mean, back in like 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
Faxing?
Yeah.
It was
faxing it over now. Yeah, that's something that
I probably wouldn't have got it, but
would have been. Yeah, and also too, what were the letters that she had?
Yeah, I wouldn't be good at that.
Yeah,
so there was like some comments on the video of people like sympathizing with her. They were saying like, there's no way. What an old thing. This is ridiculous. No one would have guessed that. One said it was cruel.
It was cruel. Well, also too, like, how long has Wheel of Fortune's been on the air for? Like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So they've had to go through, all of these.
Yeah, they're probably running out of like statements or like phrases.
They've added new categories and different ways to like present the puzzles and everything. So they're evolving.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if I would have got that. The X would have been tough because I don't think they had the X.
Yeah,
she had the X, right? Yeah, faxing. I haven't sent a fax in. I don't even know if I've ever. No, that's not true. I have sent a fax, but it's been a very long time.
Yeah, well, I was going to do it this week, but it turns out it's a different form.
You just gave up. You gave up. So yeah, the Wheel of Fortune evolving. As you know, Ashley, language also evolving.
Yes.
Which is why dictionaries are always being updated. The latest example, Cambridge Dictionary, saw this news article come out recently. Cambridge Dictionary adding 6,000 new words.
Oh, my goodness.
In recent years.
Okay.
That's not just this year.
I was like, holy crap.
They're always kind of putting out the new words that are out there. I'm going to give you a pop quiz. You gave me a pop quiz a few weeks ago, so here's my payback here. So I'm going to give you a word that was recently added to the dictionary.
See if I know what it means.
See if you know what it means.
Okay.
And this first one, I have to admit, even though I have the definition in front of me, I still don't know what it means. This is one that the kids say, skibbity. Have you seen like this viral? It's based on a viral animation video on YouTube, I think.
No. I mean, I've heard it, but I don't know.
So you could have basically said anything and it would have been right. Apparently, this is a gibberish a
And
gibberish
that's going
term.
in the dictionary?
Yeah,
Come
but
on, guys.
again, it's gained traction online due to that viral animated series, I guess, on YouTube. It's defined essentially as a word that can have different meanings, such as cool or bad, and can be used with no real meaning as a joke. So an example is, what the skibbity are you doing? So essentially,
I'm
I
going to
guess
start saying that to you.
I guess, please do. That'll go over really well. So apparently you just insert the word and it means anything, which to me means nothing. Yeah, exactly. So
Sheesh.
yeah, I've heard
Skibbity.
my kids say it, but not like, they don't say it a lot, but
Well, that's good.
yeah, I guess, I don't know. Skibbity doo. I don't know. Here's another one. Delulu.
Oh, my goodness.
Delulu. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
So this is it makes sense when you hear the definition. It's based on a play on the word delusional, meaning believing things that are not real or true.
She's
Usually
Delulu.
because you choose to. She's Delulu.
Okay.
Which again, to me, as an older person,
Just
I
say
guess now,
delusional.
just say delusional. It's an extra syllable, maybe.
Yeah.
Delulu, delusion. Yeah, it's an extra
Yeah.
syllable. Yeah.
Come on,
Why do we have to
guys.
shorten everything? So just a
Exactly.
couple examples of language kind of
interesting.
evolving there. Yeah. What else you got?
Well, tractor trailer fire, which I mean sounds like we're kind of bringing down the vibe here. However,
nobody was hurt, right?
I don't. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
No, everything was good. It was
Yep.
in Missouri. 40,000 pounds of ribeye steaks on board. Happened on Route 174, and obviously a total loss. You and I discussed this story, and it, of course, at first I was like, I wonder what that smelled like, and then we got discussing on how we would take our steaks.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you take your steak, Scott?
I take it like normal people do, medium rare. Most people, medium rare, medium, I think.
No.
No,
No.
you are not.
I want it well done, and when you think it's well done, leave it on for a few more minutes.
You want it
I want
black.
beef jerky, and then I want A1 sauce.
Okay, yes, we've talked about this a little bit before. Have you tried?
Oh,
Have you-
no.
So you've never tried it.
If there is any sort of pink, I
You're
would put it in the microwave.
You're
I've put it in
ruining
the
the
microwave.
steak, though.
Oh,
So this tells me you don't like the taste of steak, which is
Oh, no, I
fine.
love the taste of steak. It just needs to be cooked.
You like steak powder. Doesn't that come out as like powder?
No, it's chewy.
Or leather?
If my jaw's not sore by the end
Chewy?
of the steak, it's not good. No, and I don't want any fat. Why would I buy fat? I want to lose fat. I don't want to be eating it.
That's not the way it works.
Well,
It
it is in my mind.
It tastes good. Okay, so extra well done, and you drench
Extra
it in
well done.
in steak sauce.
I dip it in steak sauce, and that one of my favorite meals.
Okay, so your husband and kids,
Yep.
when they eat steak, is it the same thing?
Oh no, Matt would take it like you
Your
take
husband
it.
would
Yeah.
take it
Oh,
medium,
yeah, for sure.
rare.
Yeah.
He's from Iowa,
Yeah.
so he knows what's up.
Medium. I feel like he does like a medium well.
Medium well, just a
Although
little
there's
bit
been
of pink.
times I'm like, that thing looks like it's moving. So
Oh, Ashley. Hey, you know what? Whatever floats your boat, and I'm glad you enjoy it. I guess you would have enjoyed the steaks that fell out. I mean, they were probably
they were
burnt
probably
up, burnt up, and I don't know.
I bet those were well done.
Probably.
But they were ribeyes. I want like a cheap steak. I don't want any fat. So.
You want like the bargain. You wouldn't go to
Yeah.
the bargain aisle and
Yeah.
get your steak there. All right. Well, hey, no judgment.
I don't think
I mean,
I'm
I guess a
alone.
little bit of judgment, but that's okay.
I'm not alone.
That's
I
what it's
know
all
I'm not
about.
alone.
I know you're not alone. For sure, you're not alone. But anyway, let us know how you like your steaks, I guess.
Please do.
Please let us know what side.
1-800-324-6856.
Let us know what side of the debate you fall on. That is our show for today. We are back tomorrow with another. Thanks for listening, and thanks for all you do out there. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.